Welcome everybody to the very first video of 2023. I hope you guys are having a happy new year. And to start this year off, I want to roast 5 of my worst photos from 2022. But of course, to balance this out, I want to go over 5 of my favorite photos from last year as well. And then we're going to talk about what's coming up here in 2023 for the channel, and let's get started. So number 5 worst. I had a hard time with this one when I was out there in the field. This was actually taken right outside of Crescent City on my Redwoods trip in June. And I absolutely loved the look and the feel of this photo. When I was there, absolutely beautiful. There was nobody out there on the beach. You have a nice S-curve. You have a lot of the elements of a really nice photo. But I made one big mistake, and I talked about this in another video. I used a circular polarizer when I shouldn't have. So down at the very bottom, at the start of the S-curve, you can see where the polarizer is cutting through some of the glare in the water right down at the very bottom in the middle. The problem with this is it takes away any of that natural contrast. See, the light was reflecting down on the water. It had that nice golden kind of magenta color in it. And had I not used the polarizer, that very bottom part of the photo, it takes away any of that natural contrast. See, the light was reflecting down on the water. It had that nice golden kind of, and it really just makes the photo nowhere near as good as it could have been. If you would have had that nice sky reflection throughout this entire S-curve of the water, I think this probably could have been moved up to one of my top images. But it's just so disappointing looking at this, and some deliberate decisions that I made out in the field were the exact wrong thing to do at the time. And it's something that's so frustrating that I'd love to go back and be able to shoot this exact scene again without a circular polarizer, but getting these conditions, of course, is probably never going to happen. Everything in this points towards a really strong image. I mean, the S-curve leads right to the sun, right to the brightest part of the scene. There's so much going for this image, but I think it really fails the entire bottom third or bottom left third of the image itself. And that's a huge part of the image to have fail. You know, 2/3 of the image is good, the other 1/3 is bad. And I just, to me, that's what makes this image number 5. Well, coming in at number 4 is from the same exact trip in the Redwoods. Doing a hike, and I was coming across this little scene where the trail going right towards a sunstar. Now, when I first got into photography, I was obsessed with shooting sunstars. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, but I don't really shoot this anymore, this kind of thing. I find it more of a distraction. When you're shooting directly into the sun and you get a sunstar, it can be nice if it's really small. But when it's really big in the frame, like in this photo here, I just feel like it takes away from everything else. There's a nice red trail leading line. So there's some color contrast between the red and the green. We have some vertical lines with the trees. It was a little bit of wind going on. So at the very top, you can see that there's some motion blur. There's a little bit of motion blur in the ferns as well, which is okay. I'm not completely just against it. But with woodland photography, for me, the conditions matter just as much as, you know, the composition. Things like fog or soft light really, really help because it's so chaotic, right? But you add in a giant sunstar that just takes away a lot of the attention. I just feel like in an already chaotic scene, it's something that's not necessary, and it's something that doesn't really add to the photo. Had this sunstar been a lot smaller, I think I would have maybe been okay with it a little bit more. But composition wise, you get the nice leading line. It's good, but that sunstar, I'm not into them as much as I used to be when I first started. I just feel like in this situation, that sunstar doesn't help at all. As a matter of fact, for me, it hurts the image. Number 3. Now, I took a pretty big break from photography and YouTube between June and July. So at the end of July, I had a buddy come into town, my friend Mike, who does a lot of storm chasing. You guys have seen him on the channel. We went out finally, and I went out and took this photo here. And one of the most frustrating things for storm photographers is when a lightning strike happens right at the edge or just outside of the frame. And in this situation here, the best lightning bolt that I had pretty much all year happened right at the edge, and actually the best part of it was on the other side. When this happened, I was so excited. I think I had a time lapse going at the time, and it just flashed real quick, and I thought that I had just got it. I got it home on the computer, and I look at it, and of course this happens, and it's just so frustrating. You know, you have the best strike of the year, and you know, I went out a couple times after this. I couldn't get quite something like this. Just so heartbreaking, and it makes this image just not a good one. So that comes in at number 3. beauty. All right, so at number 2 is a very boring photo from the Big Sur coast. I thought I liked this at the very beginning, but for me, this photo is way too much of that whitewash. I mean, half of the photo is that whitewash, and the light is okay. It's still soft, but there's just not enough detail in this photo in the foreground and all that white water washing up. You know, this kind of technique I like a lot, where I'm either letting the water come in or go out, and I'm just firing off. You know, these are probably like half of a second exposure time. I don't think there's enough texture in the water to make this a strong photo. Now, this photo here, you can see is much different. The colors are nicer. You can tell there's distinct leading lines. That whitewash in that water is just so much better in this one. There's more texture, there's more lines. I actually ended up putting this up on my print shop because I really love this photo. Now, this photo didn't make my top 5, but I like it so much better than this one. I just think that it's much more attention grabbing. The colors I like a lot better. Looking back on it now, it's a very boring photo. And number 1, my backpacking trip in the Superstition Mountains. This was the morning I was hiking out. So I meant to go for 2 nights, but I only ended up staying for 1. I have a lot to say about backpacking and photography, and I'm going to make a video on that here really soon with some issues I've had with it coming up and hopefully rectify it this year. Coming out of this, the light isn't very good and the conditions aren't great. We have some green trees, but a lot of the trees are dead. It's winter time in the desert, which can be kind of hard to shoot sometimes. There's no clouds in the sky, so there's no interest. And you know, that mountain is a really, really nice shaped mountain. I feel like the subject itself is great. The thought process I had with this was nice. So this is where I actually used the circular polarizer to an advantage, right? By removing all the glare from the sky and the water, it made that rock stand out in the foreground, right? By darkening the water around, being able to see around it. Had I not used a polarizer, you wouldn't have any contrast, right? So this situation where I actually used the circular polarizer the right way, but a large portion of the image is just dark and uninteresting. I just feel like when I knew how I felt when I took this image, I was rushed. I was hiking out, right? I'd already packed up camp. I was exhausted. I was absolutely exhausted. I just wanted to get out of there. So this was a very rushed image. All around, it just wasn't a good photo. It probably would have been better if I just kept walking and just, maybe got some video of me walking by or something with it. Cause it's a nice mountain and the subject is good. I just think the wrong time of year and uninteresting sky. And I just really tried to make lemonade out of lemons and I just don't think it happened. So, all right. And that's number 1. That is the worst photo of the year, which I gotta say, in a sense, I'm proud that that's my worst photo. You know, I've taken a lot worse. If you guys saw last year's video where Chris and I were looking at all of our top 5 and worst 5, my worst 5 then was bad. This year, I feel like they're just average photos were my worst. And I feel like that's a good thing. I fall in and out of love with my photography quite a bit. Like I'll take a photo, I'll love it. But then a week later, I'm just like, nope, I'm over it. I don't like it. That happens a lot. So to have only 5 photos like this that are, I would say they're average. They're not bad, but they're definitely my worst is a good thing. And I think that going forward, it's encouraging. So, all right, let's switch gears. Let's jump over to the 5 best. And coming in at number 5 is a trip that my buddy Brent and I took to New Mexico. We went for the elk rut. Oh man, this is the year that I really wanted to do a little bit more wildlife photography, and 2023 is definitely going to be a lot more of that. This photo here, it was amazing, right? We were extremely frustrated that we couldn't find any elk. We could hear them all around us in camp, but we couldn't get to them, right? Some of them were on private land, so we couldn't get over to them. We weren't having great luck. And then we were hiking back to camp in the morning, and this guy, we see him just come flying down the mountain at us, and we duck down and runs directly towards us. And then all of a sudden, I think he got a whiff, or he knew that we were there, and he stopped and he just looked at us. But the light was absolutely perfect here. I mean, the elk himself, it's just a little guy, so it wasn't this giant bull elk with 6 tines on each side or anything. It was a small little raghorn, but absolutely beautiful animal. He had a lot of personality. He was doing some funny things with his face and sticking his tongue out. My buddy Brent got a photo with him sticking his tongue out. I missed that, but I got this with this epic light. This guy was just in a good spot to where we can get some really good light on him. I got some good compositions. He was close close enough to where we could get some good shots. You know, I had my 100 to 400, which isn't the best wildlife lens, but did a great job here. So I'm extremely happy with it. I want to do so much more wildlife photography, especially the big wildlife like elk and deer and, you know, bears and moose and all that kind of stuff. I really want to do that more this year. But yeah, this was absolutely exciting. I love the elk rut. I love watching the bulls fighting and hearing them bugling. Oh man, waking up and it's cold and it's fall. It's just, this is one of my favorite times of year for wildlife. All right, coming in at number 4, this one surprised me actually. So sometimes when I go to a location, I'm sure you've done the same thing. You go for a certain shot, right? You're looking for something. In this case, I was in the redwoods. It was the rhododendrons were blooming. Well, supposedly, I was hoping they were. And that was the big challenge of the video, was to find these rhododendrons. And of course, to get fog. Fog in the redwoods is just one of those things that, you know, I was really hoping for. I ended up taking this shot when I was on one of the hikes. It kind of snuck up on me. I was walking up a trail and just happened to look back and I see this scene and it just reminded me of like a spiral, and it's very chaotic, right? Your eye follows all these trees with all this moss going back into the distance, and it just feels like a spider web almost. I really love the scene, but I wasn't sure if it was going to turn out in a photo. And I'm not sure how many times you've taken a photo and you thought, oh man, this looks beautiful. And you get it back on the computer and everything's kind of flat. I kind of felt like this with this photo. I was looking on the back of the screen and I was absolutely loving it. In the field, I was loving it, but I wasn't sure how it was going to look when I got back. But when I got it back, I absolutely fell in love with it. I pulled it up just a couple of weeks ago and looked at it. I'm like, this, I think, might be my favorite photo from the entire trip, you know, which is surprising because I didn't go there for just random scenes like this. I went there for fog and the rhododendron bloom. But seeing this, it's one of those things that just, it's a surprisingly good photo for me. It's surprisingly turned out to be my favorite photo. And it's not something that I technically went there for, was to get a scene like this, or, you know, I was letting my mind wander as I was walking through, and just, I knew there wasn't going to be any fog on this hike that I was doing that morning. So I was just walking and looking, and I didn't have my camera out. I wasn't even vlogging. I think I was just hiking. And I think that's kind of the mindset that sometimes brings out my best photos, is when I'm not there for a certain thing. I don't have my blinders on. I don't have, you know, the tunnel vision. I'm just taking everything in. And if something catches my eye, I stop. I sat there for a minute and I was looking at it, and I got out the camera finally. And this just ended up being the photo that I took. And man, I couldn't be happier with it. All right, so this one, number 3, I just shot recently. The last video, if you guys are watching this relatively soon, debunking photo stacking myths. Now, I'd wanted to go to this area. I shoot this area all the time, right? This is a mountain that I shoot all the time. But this particular area where this barrel cactus and this cholla is an area that I've been looking at. It's way up on a hill. It's a really tough place to get to, but I've wanted to get up there. And when I got up there, I see this and I'm just like, oh man, this is it right here. And I just happened to it was sunrise, so the sun was rising behind me, and just being able to get these kind of conditions with a place that's hard to get to. It's not easy. It's a longer hike. Sometimes, you know, when you put all this effort into it and you get there, I've shot this place probably 5 or 6 times at least this year. And this is the best conditions that I've gotten finally. Like I said, it took me the whole year, you know, 5 or 6 times to get conditions like this with a colorful sky, you know, and it was at sunrise, which usually this is a better sunset spot. You know, I knew I wanted to film a video, you know, just with this specific, you know, debunking these myths. So I just happened to go up to this place, and it's always nice when you have these conditions while you're trying to make a video, you know? So I had to stop for a second filming the video while I shot this, but man, this is probably my favorite image from this particular location. All right, number 2. Now, this video is probably my most popular video last year. It's gotten quite a bit of views compared to anything else that I've done. You know, going out to teach something, like I was teaching how to use a 10-stop filter. It just happened that the clouds were moving in the right direction. I found a good composition. You know, the colors were great, and I just happened to take this one shot, and it all worked out just so nice. I love these stones in the foreground, using the 10-stop to really smooth out that water. You know, you have a nice subject. This is Canyon Lake in Arizona, which is an absolutely beautiful place. But I only go there during the week and on sunrise because there's a lot of boats going on and people out there. So it's I don't go out there for sunset, and I definitely don't go out there on the weekends. Everything came together as far as conditions go in this. This is another image that I've put on my print website because I think this makes an excellent print. The mood and the colors, the composition, everything just complements itself. And I think it just worked out really, really well and has earned its spot at number 2. Number 1 this year. I explained it in the video, but we don't get fog here in Arizona very often. The dew point and the temperature don't line up very often. And then it had rained for a couple of days before that. So the ground had a lot of water in there. But because of the ground in Arizona being so just solid rock almost, there's not a lot of times where the ground gets saturated and is able to produce these kind of conditions. I woke up that morning, looked out the window, and there was fog. So I took off, you know, it kind of confirmed as I was looking at my phone. I was like, oh man, it looks like it's probably going to be foggy. You got the conditions, the dew point's right. So I look outside and of course we have fog. So I grab my stuff and I just fly out there. I'm walking out and I don't see anything. It's just completely foggy. No mountains, no nothing. I'm just walking and I come around this little hill and I'm walking down the trail and all of a sudden I can just see a little sliver of the Superstition Mountains. And I'm just like losing my mind at this point. I have no idea how long this is going to last. And so I see this cholla cactus and I was kind of panicking and looking around because at this point in the hike, you can see kind of behind there's not a lot of foreground. This part of the mountain, there's just not much. There's a saguaro cactus here and there, but all of the main chollas and the saguaros and all that desert vegetation is further back on the trail, closer to the trailhead. So this one cholla, I had no other choice. I mean, this was it. So I get set up and then the fog, you can see it starts to kind of separate. So it's like wispy, but there's a little bit of separation in between the 2 layers of fog. I could not believe it. I was going nuts. So I snap off these shots and I'm just an absolute landscape photography heaven. Very rarely does everything line up, like the composition, good light, and then conditions like this. You know, to me, that's the perfect recipe for a powerful landscape photo is not only good light, not only good composition, good camera technique, you know, being sharp where it needs to be, but also the conditions, right? Some kind of atmospheric conditions that's unique. Because fog is so unique in Arizona, this is what makes this a portfolio image for me. Had there been no fog, it's an okay photo, but the fog is really, really what makes this. You know, the sun comes up kind of behind the Superstitions, facing east here. So being backlit like this, it's not perfect, but because of the fog, it makes everything better. I've gotten to the point where a lot of times if I get home, I just want to relax, you know, I'll put my camera stuff away. Maybe I'll I'll import the photos, but sometimes I'll just leave them for a couple of days and come back to them. But I went directly home. I put all the photos on my computer. This is probably my favorite photo. I have a hard time saying of all time. It's up there. It's top 3 photos of all time. It's rough because I know a lot of you guys watch my videos throughout the year and I've taken, 20, 30, 40 photos, whatever it is. But really, as far as adding photos to my portfolio, it's usually maybe 3 to 5 per year that what I like to call it stands the test of time, or it's something that I love over a period of time and not just something I love and then a week later I'm over it. Very few photos stand that test of time. This photo is definitely going to be one of them. I can tell you that now. I love it as much as the moment that I took it. It's always a strong test looking at a photo a month or 2 months or 3 months later, which is why I don't ever put photos in my portfolio right away. I always wait a couple of months to make sure that I really do still love the image. This photo here is definitely going in my portfolio. I'm still waiting. I haven't actually updated my website with it yet, but it is going to happen because I absolutely love it. So it just makes me happy. Now, 2022, I didn't really get out as much as I'd like. I took a long break from photography and YouTube. And I didn't shoot as much as I want to, but 2023, that is definitely going to change. We have some big trips coming up. Chris is actually going to get back into the photography. She's probably not going to get back into the YouTube part of it. We have a big trip in Patagonia planned. We're doing fall in Patagonia in April. So we're going to be down there in Chile and Argentina shooting Patagonia again, which I am so excited for. We also got a trip coming up in San Diego in the middle of January. And then we're going to do some other trips here too, but I'm planning on shooting a lot more locally, and I'm doing a lot more just getting out and shooting wildlife, macro, and all kinds of stuff. So I'm definitely going to get out more than I did in 2022. Thank you guys for your support throughout the year. It is very much appreciated. Lots to come in 2023. I hope you guys have a great start to the year, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.